All right, we're ready to go.
Let's do
Hey, Rob.
this.
Yeah, happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
Love the hat.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so cool.
Winter's come in, so just getting ready for that.
And it's interesting that it's orange because I'm always saying to my clients, bring in the orange, right?
Yeah,
Orange
you
is
do like
the,
orange.
orange is the sacral chakra. So
Yeah,
sex and money.
it's the color of my amber necklace too.
Oh yeah, right, right. Yeah. So thanks so much for being here with us today. I'm really excited to share your story. It's just been such an amazing journey over the past year and a half. And I just get so excited thinking about, all that's happened for you and you're just, it just feels like you're just getting started. Like there's just so much more to come. So before we get started, I just want to give you an opportunity to, tell everybody who you are and what you do and whatever else you want to share with us about your business and the kind of work that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I work as an editor, so I edit stuff for a lot of commercials, music videos, sometimes longer projects, documentaries, things like that. But I I'm one of three partners. We own a video editing company in Toronto called Nimio Pair, and yeah, we're fortunate to work with some pretty cool clients. This year alone, we've done, you know, uh, as a company, we've done these like artistic films for the ROM. We've worked with, this year I've worked with really big brands from McDonald's to, um, Loblaws, all the big Canadian companies, Indigo. I helped Indigo rebrand recently. A couple of music videos too. I did two Drake videos this year. One was Drake in Future, the other was just Drake for his new album. Also a Shakira video with the Black Eyed Peas. So yeah, we're a Toronto company, but we are fortunate to do a lot of global work. We do work in the States or work with American clients as well. So yeah, we have an office in Toronto, and there's about 12 of us now in the company, and it's been a good journey, year and a half old now. So
Oh yeah. And I mean, your work is amazing. And, I've even, some of the work your partners are doing, it's really powerful work. And I was just thinking, like, as you said, I'm sitting in my office and, when we first started, there was no office. There was no office. So you've really like it, and it just continues to grow and grow and grow. So tell us a bit about, yeah, where you were when you started the journey in the coaching program. What was going on for you when you decided one day to reach out and find a coach? What was happening for you? I think it was kind of like we were still in the thick of the pandemic, right?
yeah, it was June or July of 2020, I believe. It was like the part of the summer. Toronto was very locked down, like the most locked down place in North America. So it was tough to go from, I was working for a company before, and had a very social life and just a normal life. I had never really gone through depression or anything like that. I was fortunate to have just kind of always been, things were good. And then the pandemic hit, and I went into a very dark place, I'd say. I think the first time I called you, Cheryl, I was just like not in a good headspace, for many reasons. The world was flipped on its head, and I feel like I also was at a bit of a crossroads where um, I wasn't sure. Like I'd had some success, in my career, and I think I got to a point where I wasn't sure what was supposed to happen next, and I was trying to figure that out. So I think I was naturally feeling a little unfulfilled, and then combine that with COVID hitting, and then the world stops, and you have all this time to kind of reflect and be like, oh my God, I'm 34, and am I doing the right things with my life? Am I happy? Um, I, I was in a bad place where I couldn't really be productive because I was just had so much anxiety, and that was a new feeling for me. So I think my girlfriend, whom I live with, during COVID, it's tough to live with anybody. You just spend so much time getting on each other's nerves. But she was like, "You got to do something, man. Like whatever it is, Buddhism, professional coach, whatever it is, you got to figure out how to be not uh, a shell of yourself." Because I was waking up really late, feeling uninspired, just not bad energy. I was in a bad vibration. And yeah, I started doing some research. I can't remember exactly how I found you, but I believe in serendipity. So I think it was just meant to be. And we had a great phone call, and that started my kind of climb out of the darkest place I've ever been in my life.
Ooh, climb out of the darkest place. That could be the title.
Yeah, good title.
That could be it. I mean, I think a lot of people were feeling that way, right? And I know we've talked about this before about, getting your energy. Like, I'm an extrovert. I get my energy from people. And you're probably, I don't know if you're an extrovert or an introvert. Maybe, I don't know. Do you know? Like, are you a bit of both? I kind of feel like you're a bit of both, right? Like, you get your energy from others, but then you also have a tendency to go within to get creative too. So but I think a lot of us were feeling that way of not having that connection and that energy, and the distractions, right? Like the distractions that we would normally have that were no longer there, which I think for a lot of people force us to look at whatever it is that we need to look at in our life. And that's probably a lot of what was going on for you and many others during that time. I always say, I remember always saying, like, if you can't go outside, go inside, right? Like, this is the best time to do this work. And so, like you said, serendipitous, like, this was the time for you to do the work. And you had, because you're so intuitive. I mean, that's why you're so good at what you do, that you really tapped into that and listened to your intuition and said, okay, I need to look at all this. So very, very cool. And so, what have you gotten from coaching? Like what, a lot of people don't even know what coaching is, or, how it works, or, how it can help you. What's it done for you? Like, what are some of the things that you've gotten from it that have been most helpful for you?
I think uh, understanding how the world works, like the laws of the universe, I guess, in some ways, understanding how your own mind works. It's changed my perception on a day-to-day basis in terms of, you know, now let's say I want something, I feel like there is a systemic sort of like path to achieving that. So I think it just gave me tools to understand that, okay, well, here I am in my life and I want to be here. It can be very anxiety inducing not to know how to get from point A to point B. So I think the biggest thing I've got from coaching is just from studying success and successful people through, thinking into results, psycho-cybernetics, the magic in your mind, the programs we've done, they've given me so many tools to really not feel hopeless ever. I never feel like, and I was feeling like that before. I was just feeling depressed every day, and I wasn't working out and I wasn't growing in my career. Um, when I first called you, and I think it was easy to sort of just feel helpless and then feel comfortable in that. So yeah, I think the biggest thing coaching has, and it continues to grow. Like I think at that, when we started together, I was looking for something totally different. I was just looking to be, enjoy life again and inspired. And that was a year and a half ago now. And I feel like I've achieved so many things, and now I'm not the same person I was when we started, but it's nice to reflect back on it sometimes and realize that, if you are in that headspace, there is a path out of it. And I think it requires work, but it's it's great work. It's, it's building your life. So, what's more important than that?
Mm, mm. So, what's interesting about what you just said, I'm not the same person I was when I started. Um, I really find that this work is really about helping you tap into your personal power, and learning how to think in a new way that puts you in the driver's seat, that allows you to know that you're in control, right? Because I think even now, like, there's a lot of conversations about recession and economy and things like that. And people are, again, letting the external circumstances control how they think or feel or act. But understanding that, you know, you you have the power to choose what you focus on, what you think about, and that's always been there, but we don't always realize it, right? We forget, or we're conditioned, for other things. Like I always say, you were born to be successful, and then the conditioning, from our environment, or the people around us, or the cultures or whatever, kind of squashes that down. So now that you're, tapping back into that, I mean, this is you're not the same person you were, but this is who you're meant to be, right? Yeah, this is who you were meant to be. And then when you tap into that personal power, what else is possible for you?
Yeah, I think it's a journey to uncover your real self, which gets muddled, like you said, with all the things in life sometimes, or allowing what are perceived failures to kind of influence your judgment on who you are. So I think it requires an understanding of your mind to realize that you're not your mistakes, you're not your past, and that you can build this really bright future for yourself, and walk into that. So I think, yeah, so
Mm.
I'm not the same person I was, and by that I meant I'm not depressed anymore. But yeah, I think you're always at your core kind of the same person, and you're just uncovering your real self as you hopefully grow.
Peeling back the layers, right?
Mm.
Peeling back the layers of, you know, your most authentic self, and getting into alignment with who that is. When you do that, like, everything just starts to soar. So what's happened for you? Like, I mean, again, like when you started, I can't remember exactly where you were, but you were in the process of, you were thinking about starting your own agency, or you were you, I think you were still working at your previous job, right?
I was,
So,
yeah.
like a year and a half, what's happened?
Yes, so many great things. I was working for a company as an editor on their staff, and I realized once we started doing the work that I did want to be in control of my own brand. And I'd been in this industry for 12 years, and in the back of my head, you're always sort of thinking like, if I were to do this, I'd do this differently, or you know, I would do this with a company. And I started getting emotionally involved with the idea of building a post-production company, an editing company that was operating the way that I envisioned it, which you can't do if you don't own the company, I think, really. So partnered with some really great people, amazing people in our industry. And we started with three of us, August of 2021. And immediately out the gate, like, we didn't even have a name for the company yet. Like, we were just, all this just started happening. Yet we got a call from Air Canada to do uh, their commercial for the Tokyo Games, the Olympics. So that was our first client. We didn't have an office uh, at the moment, but I knew people in the industry. Like, I was a known editor, but still at the time dealing with anxiety over like going out on your own for the first time in your life, and in the back of your head not being sure if, just the natural human voice in your head that says, well, you're giving up a paycheck to do it on your own. I think every entrepreneur deals with that. But having the tools, I was, in the middle of thinking into results at the time, and crashing through the terror barrier, and really just waking up every day and saying, visualizing where I wanted the company to be. That's something that you and I talked about a lot too. And now, a year and a half later, we've gone from working out of my bedroom essentially into, we have a gorgeous office in a museum. Still waiting on some furniture to come in, but yeah, there's not 3 of us anymore. There's 12 of us now. And we started with Air Canada, which was a great first client. And then I think my second job, the Nivea pair did, was rebranding YouTube Canada. So we were fortunate to get a couple of big jobs right out the gate. And then Drake called, and we're working on his videos, and it's just been a snowball effect of attracting really great clients that we are fortunate to work with, and really great people to grow the company with. Like I said, we're growing kind of thoughtfully. I'd say, like, we're not trying to just expand rapidly and without a purpose. It's very much like trying to attract the people that have the same values and goals as us, and building a company of like-minded people that are all trying to do the best creative work in the world. And yeah, it's been really fun too. So
Yeah, and like I said, I think you're just getting started. But what I love about, the fact that you've grown this, you're really, you've really taking all this, that you've learned in coaching and transitioning it into strong leadership. You're building a really cool culture, an environment where people love to come to work every day. And think about it, when people love to come to work every day, they're going to be in their most creative state, right? They're going to, they're just going to, outperform because of that. So, it's not just about the work that you've done on yourself and how that's translated into results for your life, but it's also what you're creating, for your company and for your culture. That's, again, it's just snowballing in a way, isn't it? And not just snowballing, because I know we talked about like being, the #1 editor in Canada, but you're expanding, right? You're expanding. So tell us about that. Like, what exciting opportunities are coming, or what I love the word. I love the fact that you said attracting, right? I'm attracting the right clients. I'm attracting the right, people in our company. I'm attracting the kind of jobs that I want. So tell us more about attracting. What have you learned about the power of really, it's the universal law of attracting, right?
yeah, I think I've learned that you can manifest anything. Weirdly, I think everyone kind of knows that in the back of their head, but if you don't believe it, if you can't visualize it, if you're not using your imagination, it's hard to make those things come into fruition. But if you understand the laws, and you understand that, if you're emotionally attached to something and you're committed to this vision of yourself or your company, then it all falls into place, because you have infinite potential and you have all the tools within you. But going back to expanding and growing, I think that feeling through nurturing a company, it's been extremely rewarding. Like, I think I say this to you all the time. Like, you ask me if I'm an extrovert or not. I don't know, but I do like people a lot. Frequently I have to work alone as an editor. You're kind of just trying to craft something. You have 4 hours of footage, and you have to make a really cool 1-minute commercial out of it and make people care about it. Frequently you do that alone, but we have an office, and everyone comes in every day. I'm here now. And it's such a great vibe. One of my assistant editor, she was our intern. She's 23, and she'd been interning for maybe a month or two. I think she was on a 3-month internship, and close to the end of her internship, she came into my office and said, like, "This is the best job I've ever had. I would love to work here full time. Can we make that happen? Like, I just show up inspired every day. There's such a great environment. We all support each other. We're all like-minded in the sense that we all want to achieve greatness within ourselves in terms of being artists, Um, Editing is a niche art. It's not really understood yet, I think, but as the proliferation of videos becomes a thing and everyone in the world is making videos, I think people are starting to appreciate that it's hard, like you're crafting a story, when you're editing something, whether that's a music video, a documentary, a YouTube short, whatever it is, you're telling a story, and it it takes a lot of study and practice and skill to be able to make people care about that story, because there's so much content in the world. So to have, the number one trending video on YouTube, which we did this year, number one and two video, it's, you put out a product that people paused and said, like, there's a billion videos, there's cat videos, there's TikTok, but 60 million people in the first week are going to watch this because you're creating culture, so creating content that's influencing the culture. So yeah, everyone in the office buys into that, I think. And yeah, my girlfriend says to me sometimes, she's like, it's so weird that you wake up Monday morning and you're like inspired and excited to go to work, whereas most people, that's not the norm. But it's true. It's how I feel. And every week there's goals and targets, and I think we all understand what we're trying to build at Numio Pair. So it's a great environment.
I love that. I love that. Every morning you're excited to get up and go to work. I mean, really, when you have a worthy goal and you're in alignment and you're doing what you love, that's just naturally how it is, right? Like, I see all these posts about the Sunday scaries and stuff, and I don't think that way at all, because I love what I do as well. And I think that, the more that we can get people into alignment and doing what they love and feeling really good about it. And like I said, like you said, tapping into, their personal power. Just imagine, right, how that energy shifts globally, really, when you think about it. And oh my gosh, there's so much about what you said. And the word that just keeps coming up for me with you, Raj, is intuition. Like, you're just talking about how you're sitting there in a room for 4 hours to create a 1 minute clip, right? And, so much of what you do, I mean, there's an art, there's skill, there's talent, there's all these things that you've accumulated. And then there's, the power of our imagination and our intuition and all of our mental faculties that come into play as well. And I just think, the more that we can tune into our intuition, the more that we can tune into these things that are, innate within us, like the more that we just really, shine. And you continue to, like, trending number 1 and 2 on YouTube, like that was a goal, and you checked the box, right? You had a vision, to grow a company, and now you've got, beautiful office space and 12 people, and I'm sure the vision is just going to keep getting bigger and bigger. And now you're expanding, and so it's so cool. And when you think about what's happened for you, what would you like to tell someone who's thinking about doing this work, or, you know, sitting there where you were a year ago in a really dark place, thinking like, I don't know, don't know what I want to do with my life, or, I'm not happy. What would you want to tell them based on where you were and where you are?
Yeah, I would say it's one of those things. It's hard to know the value of it unless you do it, right? And I think a lot of people can be skeptical and just, there's so much self-help stuff out there. There's so many programs that maybe people have tried and they didn't work. So it can be tough to take the leap to say that, I'm investing in myself and I'm committing to this. But it definitely works. Like, you and I have worked together for a year and a half now, and we've gone through several programs together. And it's, like I said, it is a journey in the sense that it's not like you do thinking into results and then like every single thing in the world you have, you're completely fulfilled. But it's the start of a journey that can take you to incredible places if you trust and believe that if you put in the work, it'll happen for you. It can be hard to visualize that when you're not in a great mental state, I think, which I think a lot of people still are. Like you said, the last 2 years have been hard on a lot of most people, at least different. And, I think there are a lot of people that are on the cusp of like, yeah, maybe this will work. I don't know. I've tried, reading the self-help book once and it doesn't work for me or something. But I think if people can feel your energy and give it a shot, I think they'll be pleasantly surprised that, I've had friends I've recommended to do the program to, and some did and some didn't. And it's just funny, a year later, where the people that did the program are, and the people that haven't maybe are still dealing with the same frustrations they were a year ago.
Mhm.
So I would say that, yeah, it may be tough to dive into something that you don't know where it's going to take you, but I think if you come into it with open arms and an open heart, that it has to work. Like Bob Proctor says, I guarantee it'll work. I still, have my gold card in my pocket, and um, the stuff that we were doing in week one, I still think about a year and a half later. So
Mm,
um, yeah.
mm. I love that. Like, I think it's really about like, taking that leap of faith to invest in yourself. And I think it really starts with having a strong desire, right, to get out of wherever you are. And then, yeah, you're going to have to trust in, that this is the answer. So that, what's different about this program? Because like you said, there's so many coaches out there, there's so many things going on out there, there's so many books. What if you could pinpoint on, what you've done in the past and what you've learned here? What's different about this program?
I think it's nice to have a curriculum that's like set out over the course of, you know, 12 weeks or 24 weeks. So I think it's just very well thought out in terms of all the aspects of understanding your mind and understanding how to program yourself to achieve better things. You know, it requires more work than just here's the secret to life kind of thing. You have to go through, do the work, do the homework, the repetition. I think, but I think what's different about it is just it pulls from so many other programs, or so many other books like Thinking into Results. Bob Proctor kind of came up with that based on a lifetime worth of learning, and Sandy Gallagher as well. And so I think what's different about the program is it's very thorough in terms of it doesn't promise half an hour and you have everything. It takes months, but I think you start seeing results right away, and um, it's something you can revisit. I still listen to. I walk to work every morning, and I'll just throw on random lessons sometimes, if or whatever I feel like that week I might need a bit more of. So it's some of the concepts I think are quite simple, but it takes constant repetition and practice to make them part of your psyche, and it works. And I think that's what's different too. There's a lot of programs that I've tried in the past, or they might give you like a temporary, you'll feel good for an hour after, you're like, yeah, I got this, but then you don't have all the tools to deal with all those situations. Whereas I think Thinking into Results is very expansive in terms of the tools it gives you.
Mhm. Yeah, so you're doing the mental reps, right, daily. And so you're having that, repetition. It is a beautifully curated program. And it really does help you tap into your mind and the power of your mind. And then what do you get, in the coaching? Like what's, how do you, so that's one piece of it. And then, what's your experience been in our calls, right? Because I think that's another layer that just sort of adds. I mean, I know what it is for me, but I'm just curious to hear what your perspective is.
Yeah, I love our coaching calls. I look forward to them all the time. And what I like about it too is that it isn't regimented. Like I like doing the Thinking to Results program that was very structured, but I also enjoy, now that we've passed that, and we chat, whenever we do have our sessions, it sort of is having someone to bounce ideas off of, and it's very in the moment. It's whatever I'm dealing with that week, or that could be an issue with staff. It could be an issue with, wanting to land an early big job that I'm quoting. It could be in my personal life. It kind of is whatever is pressing at the moment. And there's an energy to that I really enjoy, because it's always different. I never know exactly what we're going to talk about when we get on these calls, but it flows in such a way that I've realized, like, there's always something very enlightening that comes out of it, just through us finding it together. And you have so many tools, and you've put so much work into understanding the mind and doing all these programs. You have a lifetime worth of experience. So, sometimes I don't have those tools immediately, but I'll tell you about something that's bothering me, and you'll say, oh, the Haponaona, this Hawaiian prayer really works, and I think this will be good for you. So it feels very curated to my personality. I think you understand how my mind works, which, it's we live in such a world where there's so much going on all the time, and it can be tough, especially running a business, to know, am I making the right decisions all the time? And it's fine if you don't. Obviously, you don't, you strive for perfection, but you're okay with course correcting. But you're so smart, Cheryl, and you understand the way I think, and you understand my wants and needs, probably as well as I do, if not better. So having a sounding board, I love in our conversations too, when you say, I heard something in your voice, or I heard a bit of uncertainty in what you were talking about, or, you have trouble celebrating yourself, or whatever it is that you're detecting in my voice. That's invaluable to me, and I think gives me something to meditate on. And I grow from there after all of our conversations. So it's
Yeah,
it's good
thank
to do
you.
that
That's
in tandem.
wonderful. Yeah. I mean, it's really, there's the science of coaching. There's the heart, which is the connection and the trust and the rapport. And then there's the art, right? And it's so similar to what you do in a way when you really look at it.
Mm.
We're on a call, and I'm taking that, hour that we have together, and then, pulling out that 1 minute of, okay, here's what we need to look at in order to go to the, make that next shift, or, go to that next level. And so I think in a lot of ways, what you do and what I do are so similar, because we're really tuning in, we're tapping into our intuition, we're, creating, something magical. And then and that's the beauty of the partnership, right? Is that we're co-creating together to get you the outcomes that you want, so that you can just keep, moving, towards it, up, onward and upward kind of thing. So somebody's sitting here and thinking about joining, and I love what you said about, you've shared it with some people who have, and some people who haven't, and the ones that have are getting these amazing results. The ones who haven't are still in the same place they were a year ago. I mean, I just think that's so powerful. What do you want to tell them? What do you want to say to those people that are sitting on the fence and, and haven't made any progress over the past year?
Yeah, I'd say this is your life. This is probably the one chance you have to do something. Maybe not. I don't know. Like that, I'm not going to get to the spiritual side of it, but this is your life, and you have a set amount of time on Earth. And I think a lot of people aren't living the life that they truly desire, and so much of that is based on the conditioning that we all have, or the conditioning that we're all born with. Everyone's living sort of the life that they've imagined, whether or not they know it. They're living the life that they feel that they deserve. So what I would say to someone thinking about joining the program is, imagine your best possible life, and understand that you can achieve that through this program. It gives you
Mm.
a step-by-step way of doing it with, a great coach who can help you really understand that. And it's so powerful to be able to understand your own mind, and to understand that you can create your own reality. And what's funny about having done the program and continuing to work with you is that listening to interviews with other really successful people, they say the same thing. I listened to this interview with Jay-Z the other day, and he was talking about how I wasn't happy with the life I was living. He was growing up in Brooklyn in poverty, and I decided I would create the life that I wanted. And he's a very special person. I think 1 in a billion people can come to this stuff on their own. There are people in history that have been able to just figure it out on their own, or who knows what tools or books they've read, but it is a commonality you see among the most successful people in the world, where they talk about imagination and visualization and the power of creating your own reality. And I think the average person doesn't realize that that exists for everyone, and thinking into results and going through working with a great professional coach can help anyone tap into that. So live your
Yeah,
best life, people.
right. I mean, it starts with a burning desire, right? And, everybody has a mentor. Like, I've had many mentors in my life. I would not be where I was without mentors. So there is so much power in that. And there's so much power in having that objective perspective to, like you said, to kind of raise that, hold up the mirror to show you what you just said, or what what we just heard, so that you can, you can take that information and help you move it towards whatever it is that you're needing to do next. So it's true, though, that there's a very small percentage of people that really understand that they create their own reality. And really, we're always manifesting. We're just not always manifesting, we're good stuff. Sometimes we're manifesting the stuff that we don't want. But that we do have the power when we learn how to, tap into it. So that's the piece. Like, people are like, I want this thing, but I don't know how. This program is the how, right? It teaches you how. It teaches you an exact repeatable formula to create anything that you desire. And you've, proven that. You've created this beautiful life, this beautiful business. You're just you're just taking off. Like, we're going to come back here in a year, and there's going to be so much more to celebrate. There already is. It's not all public yet, but there's more coming, right? So thanks so much for sharing your story, Raj. I'm so happy for you. And, I cannot wait to, to come back here and share more wins and inspire more people. And I just love what's happening in your life. And, we're going through another wave of, something, and you're going to navigate through it completely differently because
Yeah.
of the work. So congratulations in showing up for yourself and investing in yourself and doing the work, because you're the proof that it works.
Thank you, Cheryl. And yeah, thank you for everything. Thank you
Yeah.
for, being a lifesaver, a life changer. You've taught me so many things that, yeah, I'm just grateful that we have this great relationship, and grateful for you. You've been an amazing mentor and coach, and yeah, just getting started, like you said. So I'm excited to keep building and see where this takes us.
I'm so grateful for you, because it's, you give me the ability to live with purpose every day. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing.
All right.
Really love you. Okay.
All right.
Have a
Take care.
great week.
You
Bye.
too. Bye.